Okay, so the Champions League returns next week with the knockout playoff round. The winners move on to the round of 16, and we kind of know who their opponents will be, kind of. But anyway, that's getting ahead of ourselves as the first legs haven't even been played yet. So guys, a couple of matchups that I'll go into more depth with, and others I'll be more efficient, okay? Kind of like how I do UCL this week. Gala versus Juventus is an interesting matchup as Galatasaray are incredibly difficult to read. They can look like a dark horse for a deep-ish run at times, and others, they look very pedestrian. Their attack can switch off at times, which is wild considering the amount of investment put into that area of the pitch recently. By the way, Icardi is still there and scoring goals. Former Juve enemy. But with that said, they had one of the weakest attacks in the Champions League. In the league phase, they only scored more goals than 9 other clubs in the entire league phase of 36 teams. So 9 goals in 8 matches. The flip side of that, one of the better defenses with 11 conceded, they ranked 13th. Now, the good thing is that they're coming across a Juve side that is in interesting form. Now, I say this ahead of Juve playing the Derby d'Italia against Inter this weekend, so who knows, they could have surged to a great momentum-shifting victory there. But prior to the recent dip, Spalletti had figured things out. Now, of course, a couple of bad results don't throw off the entire project or all of their progress. In fact, they played incredibly well against Lazio, and there was just kind of 2 freak goals. But those results did show us that perhaps Juve weren't as figured out, that they hadn't ironed out all of their issues yet, especially against Atalanta in the Coppa d'Italia, and they're still in the process of growing under Luciano Spalletti. It makes for a pretty interesting matchup, doesn't it? Juve are still the favorites here, but Galatasaray could easily pull off an upset like that win over Liverpool that they got. Liverpool is bad, but hey, still. But they can also put in an absolute stinker, like losing at home to Union Saint-Gilloise or losing 5-1 to an Eintracht Frankfurt team that was stinking up the standings, or that 1-0 loss to a terrible Monaco side. If anything, they are very inconsistent. What makes me worry even more for them is that Mario Lemina will be missing for the first leg, which is a big loss in the midfield. He's even played at center back lately as well. Kenan Yildiz, fresh off of signing a new contract, playing against Turkish opposition, with Jonathan David finding some form under Spalletti finally. I think that this Juve team is certainly on upset alert, but I see them making it past Galatasaray. I think this is the matchup that is most interesting for neutrals, given what happened last time. That will never be topped, by the way. Now, this match could cause a bit of a ripple effect should Mourinho be able to get one over his former club once again. He did it for the first time ever. Yes, that was his first time beating Real Madrid when Benfica beat them 4-2. Still can't believe that. That match was insane. It was like the result was secondary. And no, Real Madrid hasn't exactly improved in their performances since then, but should old Jose work his magic, use his tactical nous to exploit Real Madrid's weaknesses once again, then maybe that would be enough for Florentino Perez to want him as Real Madrid's next manager. I mean, he loves a repeat manager, doesn't he? But I actually have a video coming up next week on why I think he's joining a different side. I'm sure you can guess, but I've compiled a lot of info. But anyway, looking at this match itself, it's hard to judge just how much of the previous iteration we should really look into, right? As I said in the UCL This Week video, I fully expected Benfica to then go to Tondela and draw, and they did that. Benfica still has an issue with converting their high volume of chances into goals. We saw that again this past weekend as something Mourinho has lamented. I expect them to be able to carve out opportunities again against Real Madrid, but it's a question of how many goals they can get in that first leg, which will swing this tie, in my opinion. The whole 90 minutes at the Bernabeu is a very long time motto from Real Madrid's tie against Arsenal last season turned into an immediate humiliation meme, but Benfica is an Arsenal, so you can fully expect more difficulties playing away, especially if they go defensive. Now, the danger for Real Madrid is that 2 of their back line are 1 booking away from yellow card suspensions. Carreras and Huijsen, if they get a yellow in the first leg, they are out in the second leg. Same goes for Tchouaméni and Bellingham, though Bellingham is out with an injury zone. On top of that, Asensio is already suspended, as is Rodrigo. For Benfica, similar issues. Otamendi and Samuel Dal are both 1 yellow away from suspension. The biggest injury, in my opinion, for Benfica is Richard Rios, who is really coming alive before he hurt his shoulder. That man was balling out. One of those players I just love to watch play. Now, Real Madrid, if you ask many of their fans, they aren't at all satisfied with how their team has been playing recently. A late penalty against an, at the time, 10-man Rayo Vallecano got them a 2-1 win at home. So neither side is in the greatest form at the moment. They followed that up with a 2-0 win against Valencia, but as of the 65th minute, they had 0.33 XG. In the last match, Mourinho wiped the floor with Arbeloa, tactically speaking. Of their 3 shots on target, Mbappe converted 2 of them to make them look a little bit better, but you can't expect that to be the same story in this one. I think Real Madrid's attack will create more chances due to Benfica's defense not being very strong. And Benfica could revert to type in wasting plenty of good chances. Real Madrid also has history on their side, not with their record against Benfica, which is actually in Benfica's favor, by the way. But the last time Benfica has won a 2-legged tie against a Spanish club was back in the 1982-83 season. We've lost the last 5 2-legged ties against Spanish clubs. So this tie could go in any direction, but I think based on pure player power alone, the Mbappe X factor and potential suspension of Otamendi for the second leg, Real Madrid are the favorites. But it's the closest I've seen Benfica to being considered close to equally backed to go through. Borussia Dortmund and Atalanta, 2 teams who have recently had pretty decent domestic form results-wise. I'm not talking about performances, but at least results have been equally good for both of them in their respective countries. Dortmund scraping some results against relegation fodder, not great recently. However, they are also 2 sides who finished their Champions League campaigns in a wholly underwhelming fashion. Dortmund finished without a single win in their final 3 matches, 2 of which were losses, while Atalanta finished with 2 losses. Dortmund lost to Inter and Tottenham, relegation battling Tottenham, while Atalanta lost to Union Saint-Gilloise and Athletic Club, who finished in 27th and 29th respectively. So not good for either Atalanta or Borussia Dortmund, 2 teams coming into a matchup with some rotten form. This can absolutely make for a lovely, entertaining matchup with goals galore, so let's hope for that at least. No suspensions for Dortmund, but they do have some injuries. We'll be touch and go with Sabitzer, who is back in training now, and as far as performances on the pitch go, Guirassy has been hot and cold, but at the time of recording, does have 3 goals in his previous 2 matches. But has been nothing like the goal scorer he was last season in the Champions League, where he was excellent, as you'll remember. For Atalanta, they of course sold off Ademola Lookman. That saga finally came to an end. He went to Atletico Madrid, which is a huge change for them. But they brought in Giacomo Raspadori back to Italy from Atletico as well. As far as history goes, everything is pointing in favor of Atalanta. Borussia Dortmund have just 1 win in their last 7 meetings with Italian clubs, and Atalanta have only lost 2 of their previous 11 matches against German sides, and are unbeaten in their last 4 away matches against German opposition with 3 wins and 1 draw. So I'm a believer in Raffaele Palladino's side versus a Kovac side that is failing to truly impress under Niko Kovac once again, but I've been proven wrong by Borussia Dortmund in the past, especially when Niko Kovac is at the helm with that defensive style in the knockout rounds. Newcastle United are taking on Qarabag, who claimed a few fun results in this league phase, didn't they? They beat Benfica, beat Copenhagen, drew Chelsea, and beat Eintracht Frankfurt. Now, their wins were against teams who finished 30th or lower. Well, besides Benfica, but we spent plenty of time very low like that. Winless after 4 match days for Benfica. But still, you can only beat what's in front of you, right? Even in their losses, Liverpool was the only team that blew them away. They otherwise kept it relatively respectable. Newcastle United, on the other hand, they are one of the top-ranked teams in this playoff knockout round in general, and they really impressed me as their Champions League form has existed separately from their Premier League form, something that Anthony Gordon has attributed to European sides being more open to play, open football rather than the compact defensive football that has taken over the Premier League and made it a little more boring this season than seasons past, I gotta say. Newcastle United were about 2 points away from finishing in the top 8, so that speaks to how strong they have been in this competition. They get the second leg at home, where they only lost to Barcelona 2-1 and won the rest of their matches without conceding a single goal in the Champions League. I see Newcastle United as the favorites. And that form I was talking about was at home in the Champions League. Inter taking on the fairy tale story that is Bodo Glimt, the team that nobody really expected to make it past the league phase, but had such an incredible end to said league phase. In fact, these two sides were kind of heading in opposite directions to close things out. Well, to be fair, Inter finished with a win over Borussia Dortmund, but prior to that, 3 losses in a row. Bodo, on the other hand, finished with a draw away to Borussia Dortmund, a win over Man City, and then a win away to Atletico Madrid. That's not bad at all. They ended up in 23rd out of 24 teams advancing, and had it not been for Trubin's goal against Real Madrid, everyone would have been speaking about how the team from the Arctic Circle made it into the knockout rounds of this competition with their first attempt. Now, while Inter looked poor in the latter half of the league phase, losing 3 of 4 matches, prior to that, they were a top 8 side that were absolutely flying. That form still exists, as it seems like they are getting better and better under Christian Kivu. All of the names that you know and love are thriving, with one man in particular, Di Marco, playing out of his mind right now. 6 goals and 13 assists according to Transfermarkt, and he's a wingback / left midfielder. I don't even know what he is at this point. One thing that's important to note is that yes, Inter lost 3 matches, but they lost to Atleti, Liverpool, and Arsenal. Not exactly easy slip-ups or anything like that, so I think Inter will be heavy favorites for this tie, and understandably so. Olympiacos and Bayer Leverkusen. Now, I had Olympiacos as a team that could slip through in this competition, and they did exactly that. They were winless in their first 5 matches, but crucially picked up points from draws against PSV and Pafos. Then they closed this out with wins over Qarabag, Ajax, and Bayer Leverkusen, so they've done this before. Bayer Leverkusen were in some terrible form at the time. That loss capped off a hat-trick of consecutive L's, where they lost to Stuttgart, Hoffenheim, and then Olympiacos. But since then, 4 wins and a draw, and it's been a bit up and down with Kasper Hjulmand, but certainly respectable considering the false start they had with Ten Hag and, well, losing every squad member. This one could go in either direction. How much do we read into the previous results, given Leverkusen were in poor form, dominated every metric in that match, and lost? I mean, I think this one will be close, but Leverkusen will probably get revenge. Guys, this one feels like we could be looking at a potential upset. I spoke previously of how the Metropolitano hasn't been a fortress for Atletico Madrid, and so it's been interesting to hear not one, but 2 different Atletico Madrid players speak out about how the condition of the pitch is absolutely not up to standard, which makes them struggle to play well at home. At the time of recording, they had lost their previous 2 matches at home, which is just weird for Atleti. Koke and Griezmann both mentioned how they can play a bit better away right now due to the rough nature of the Metropolitano. That's an interesting little tidbit there. Anyway, enough pitch talk. Atletico absolutely had an opportunity to finish in the top 8 before squandering it with a draw and a loss in their final 2 matches. And their form overall lately, 1 win in 5 matches, not great. Club Brugge, of course, were a bit touch and go, but had opposite fortunes. They finished the league phase with victories over Qarabag and Marseille. That Marseille victory 3-0, that's a statement from them. Now, these 2 sides have played each other 4 times since 2018, and the record is even, 1 win apiece and 2 draws. Even the goals are even at 3 apiece. Most likely outcome is that Atleti advance, but like I said, I think that this is one to watch as far as a potential upset. A big club getting booted early. We'll see. We'll see. Wow, I recorded and then I forgot to even speak about PSG versus AS Monaco. I think that this one is interesting because PSG seems like a team that is, at least in their performance against Marseille, a team that's sort of finding a little bit of that form from last season. They are definitely not at the level that they want to be. They have some issues when it comes to goalkeeping, whether it's Safanov in there or Chevalier. Chevalier hasn't really done great lately, so I think that that's one potential weak area. Then, of course, there's the whole Russian versus Ukrainian of it all, which is Safanov and Zubarny not wanting to play when Safanov is on the pitch. So it is a little bit weird on the defensive side of things, but going forward, they're looking good. He's actually had to, he being Luis Enrique, bench Desiree Doué a couple of times because he has not been up to snuff. But after that Marseille victory, it looks like PSG could be on their way back. And even if they aren't at their absolute best, this AS Monaco side has not been very good. I mean, you saw how they got absolutely torched by Real Madrid. Really could use someone, you know, of the caliber of Paul Pogba in there, but unfortunately the guy who goes by Paul Pogba in their squad, he's injured again. He's injured for them again, and what a difference he could make in that midfield for them. It's unfortunate for him. It's unfortunate for AS Monaco, but I think in this one, PSG absolutely the favorites to go through from this all-French affair. Okay guys, that spells the end of this video. Thanks as always for watching, and I'll see you next week for the recap. Be well. Later.